What's up, everybody? Thralls Metal here once again. I'm Necrotic Nick, and I have an album review for you. Now, once again, this comes to us courtesy of Screaming Toilet. Again, fun site, loaded with articles, podcasts, reviews, all sorts of interesting stuff for pop culture junkies like myself. So today I am reviewing the new album from Saccage called Khaos Mortem. Now, I'm going to warn you ahead of time, all this stuff is in French or Quebecois, so I'm not exactly great at pronouncing all that, so I'm probably going to butcher a lot of this, and some of the translations might be a little rough in the song titles, but I'm going to give it a shot. So the band's name translates to Pillage. They're from Quebec. They formed in 2007. This is their third release, their second on PRC Records, which is what this one came out on. And they play sort of a hybrid mix of crust punk, thrash metal, black metal, and death grind. So it really is kind of a menagerie of different styles in here, but they're pretty good at it. Now right away it opens up with Déchaîneur. That might be it. I believe that translates to tear or rip. And right away you're greeted with a very groovy, heavy intro, and you get a sense of this giant guitar tone on here, which is almost kind of that HM2 sound, but it's a little bit more thrashy, maybe a little bit more gain in it. And it kind of reminded me right away of Rotten Sound and kind of the tone they like to work with, especially here lately. Serves as kind of an intro track, but it slowly builds into this giant grindcore crust punk blast section that you just go fucking nuts for. And right away you can hear the balance between this thrashy sound, this crust punk with hints of black metal in there, and it really kind of reminded me of a mix of a band like Disrupt and Exhumed together, which sounds like a pretty awesome tour. Right away it goes into the next track, Solier Spectral. Again, sorry, I believe that translates to Spectral Stain, and this is where you really get like a sense of their overall sound on this one. This one brings in some more grindcore influences. It is fast and furious, but it has a lot of cool, distinct, chuggy, thrashy riffs in it that I really enjoyed. Now I like how 3 of the members do vocals on this, so they kind of bounce back and forth between these different vocals, which again kind of gave me that whole Exhumed vibe. You know, Matt Harvey and Ross, or whoever he's singing alongside of, I like how they bounce that back. You get 2 distinct voices. They're not as distinct on this, but they're distinct enough you can tell a difference, and they incorporate all 3 of them at the same time for like some really good growled gang vocals on this. Now, one of my favorite tracks on here was Acufine Funéraire, which I believe translates to Tinnitus Funeral, or Funeral Tinnitus, one or the other. Kind of a fun name for it, because, I mean, I've been to a lot of shows, and I definitely know tinnitus. This already had, like, an awesome blackened feel to it. It was driven by a nice D-beat, and it really reminded me of a band like Horned Almighty, or even going back further, maybe some early Venom, too. This one pretty much stays the course, doesn't really venture outside, but it really doesn't need to. It's just supposed to be a good, raw, D-beat, ugly song, and I really enjoyed it. It's just a good driving song and tons of fun. So even the intermittent blast beats that come in there really don't take away from the overall punk feel of this song, which I really dug. Another one that stood out to me was the next track, Mal Saint Rope, which translates to either unhealthy, sick, or toxic rock. Could be either one of those, not really sure, but either one I think would really work. This one really brought forth a lot of punk energy, and I started to notice a lot of the blackened elements are kind of kept to a minimal on this. A lot of it favors more thrash metal, death grind, and crust punk. Like, crust punk, I think, is pretty much the root of this band. So now the production on this is really interesting, too. I think it kind of reminded me a lot of the mid-2000s stuff that Napalm Death released. It has a very raw, gritty sound, but it still sounds very well produced. The drums sound particularly raw on this too, and again, this guitar tone is pretty much what is right out in front. Even the vocals seem kind of farther back compared to how massive this guitar tone is. Now, another track in here I really liked was Chaosphere. This one had a little bit more of a blackened touch to it. Like I said, they're kind of kept to a minimal, but when they're used really effectively. I like how this one shifted back and forth between a crust punk song and almost a black metal song. But they're 2 distinct parts in this riff that are really cool, and they give a good contrast. instead of blending the overall sound, they had some distinct moments in there that showed a little bit of this influence and a little bit of this influence. And I thought that was kind of interesting because most of the album overall is really kind of an amalgamation of this entire sound in terms of all their influences. And that's kind of an interesting thing with fusions. It's always interesting to see which side they favor a little bit more than the other. Whether their sound is rooted in one style and they just bring in slight influences from another style. Now, another one I really dug in here was Judgment. It's probably pronounced differently in French, but I'm just going to go ahead and say it's Judgment. Now, this one opens with a distinctly groovier moment and almost kind of reminds me of sludge metal, but more like a band like Soylent Green and the way they blended sludge and then like death grind or grindcore in there, where you give you like a big sludgy, nasty riff and then just kind of do like a grindcore freak out. So I think this one had some really distinct, catchy riffs on here, and this one had some legit earworms. Like, I really enjoyed the hooks on this song. Another standout on here for me was Ivresse Libertis. Again, sorry. I believe this translates to Intoxicated Liberator, which sounds like a fun guy at a party. This one brought in a little bit of Swedish death metal influence to it. There is a distinct part that reminded me almost like of a slightly blackened, dismembered song, which Swedish death metal really kind of lended itself to this anyway, since there's a lot of D-beat in Swedish death metal. So this one was already kind of in my wheelhouse just because I love Swedish death metal so much. There were some tremolo melodies on this that I thought were only okay and really didn't serve the song very well, but for the most part, I really dug it. Now, a lot of the songs in here, I would say, sound kind of similar. They don't necessarily blend in that badly because I think they sound inspired. They don't sound as though they're dialing in any performances here. It's all very raw, it's all very energetic, and that sort of thing holds my attention. There's a lot of memorable moments in these songs that they squeeze into these relatively short ones. And when fusing so many different subgenres, there's a lot to play off of. They kind of bring in elements that favor one style more than the other in different songs here. So there is a little bit of variety, but the sound overall can get a little repetitive. Now, one I thought they stepped outside the box just a little bit was La Kermesse du Charnier. Again, sorry. And I believe this translates to The Fair from the Mass Grave, which is a pretty interesting song title. This one, it actually was a little bit more atmospheric, and there was noticeably a lot more melody to this. Like, this really favored more, honestly, Blackened Death right in the beginning. It kind of reminded me of a band like Necrophobic or even Lightning Swords of Death, if anyone's familiar with those guys. This still brought all the grit and aggression of grindcore and crust punk and death grind, but it also brought in some interesting melody. And that was something that really didn't occur much on this album, so it was kind of a refreshing thing to hear. And since this was the closer, it was nice to show that they didn't run out of ideas toward the end. They still had something else left up their sleeve that was distinctly different from anything else in the album. So all in all, I'm going to give this 3.5 stars. I really dug this album. It was a lot of fun to listen to. While some of the songs did blend together, I found a lot of distinct moments in there, and I like the overall sound. I kind of want to see what else they do, and I'm definitely going to check out a lot of their earlier releases too. This was a solid listen. It's good, high energy. It definitely could appeal to any fans of those subgenres that are kind of intermingled in there. But I'd say, like, if you're a crust punk fan, this is right up your alley. So, if you liked the video, give it a thumbs up, and if you are new to the channel, subscribe, because we do shit like this all the time. Catch you guys later.